Today we are going to start with a would you rather question. Would you rather spend money or save money, and why? So go ahead and think about that for a second. Which one would you rather do and why? As we think about this, it's important to think about what else we would need to know in this situation. Sometimes we want to spend money, right? Some of you chose that to be able to purchase things, to be able to buy something. Some of you would rather save money right now so that you can buy something bigger later. So there's reasons to do both, but it's important to know why you're doing it, and it's important to know other things about the situation. So we're going to continue to talk about this today, saving money, spending money kind of things, and see how it can apply to our math. Like Mr. Krabs, most of us like money. And we're going to talk about how that can apply to slope and y-intercept form in an equation, and how that can help us understand slope and y-intercept in context. So looking at this graph here, we're talking about dollars, your total pay in dollars, and then your total sales in dollars. So this can be one way to talk about money in slope-intercept form. So let's learn some math. This is just a funny meme that I found. My parents, when I don't close the fridge door for 1 second, "You're spending all my money." I thought it was funny. Okay, getting into this. First of all, before we get into the question about what it's actually asking you, I want you just to look at this graph and see what you notice. There's a lot of things we know about graphs that we can notice without even knowing the question that we're being asked. One thing I notice about the graph, I'm going to write them down, and hopefully you saw this, is that the graph is positive because it's increasing from left to right. It's going up. So increasing. Another thing I notice is that we're talking about dollars on the y-axis, and we're talking about weeks on the x-axis. So then our rate would be dollars per week. What else do I notice? I notice the weeks are going up by ones, and the amounts of money, the numbers that are written, are by tens, but there's lines in between, so those are by fives. I also noticed this title. The title we have is saving money. So we know that this graph is about saving money, and it's talking about saving money per week. Oh, I also see that it doesn't start at the origin. The line does not hit the origin. It starts at 30. So that 30 means $30, right? Because it's up here on the y-axis. So $30. So those are things I noticed without even knowing what the math problem is asking us. The question it's asking us is, how much money am I saving each week? So if we look here, what we've done before to solve these, how much per week, we could look at 1 point, this point right here, $60 in 6 weeks. 60 divided by 6 is 10. But then if I tried this other dot, 70 divided by 8, wait, that's not 10. Oh, I can't do that. Oh yeah, because it doesn't hit the origin. So what I have to do, remember, is change of y over change of x. So this is how we would find how much money per week, our rate of change. Remember, it's change of y, like we just said, over change of x. So here I started at these 2 dots. I use the same dots I used before, but instead of doing one, I have to use both. So remember, change of y is moving up the y-axis. So it's moving up 10 from 60 to 70. And then the change in x is moving along the x-axis from 6, moving over to 8. So that distance from 6 to 8 is 2. So $10 divided by 2 weeks would be $5 per 1 week. So that's the first question they're asking me. It would be $5 per week, and if I simplified that, my rate of change would be 5. Now, also it's asking us what's the equation here. Remember, we have our y equals mx plus b equation for linear lines, for linear graphs. So remember, linear meaning a straight line. So this is a, whoops, I wasn't supposed to do that, wrong one. It's a straight line, which means it's linear. So this is the equation that we can use for that. Remember, slope or rate of change is m. B is our y-intercept. Oh, y-intercept, intercept. That means where it intersects the line. So here, this is our y-axis going vertically. So this is our y-intercept right at 30. So then, and it's a positive 30, so it would be plus 30. We already have our rate of change, or our slope, from finding the change of y over change in x. So that means our equation would be y equals 5x plus 30. So taking our 30 from our y-intercept, our 5 from our slope or rate of change. So again, this is the same thing here. 5 is our slope or rate of change. 30 is our y-intercept or our initial value. So initial value, this just means where we're starting. So this would be at 0, right? If we're not going anywhere on the x-axis, we're starting at the origin and we're going up 30 to meet this point right here. And then the slope or rate of change is how much it's changing going up and over per 1. Per 1 whatever we're talking about, which in this case is weeks. So this is what the equation looks like, and now we can understand it in the context of this problem. $5 is what we're saving per week, and then the $30, that's how much money we're starting with. So it's important not just to know the equation, but to know what these numbers mean in the context of this graph. We're not always going to have context, but it's important to be able to look at an equation and know what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. I'm going to show you these and talk through them, and then you're going to have 4 to practice yourself. I wrote this key over here, remembering slope is just m. Slope is not the x behind it. It's just the number that's being multiplied by our x value. And here is the slope, here is the y-intercept, the plus b. It could be minus b, it could be plus b, but the plus or minus is included in the y-intercept. So it would either be a positive number or a negative number on the graph. So this first one is set up the same. I'm going to go ahead and circle the y-intercept. It's the one without the x value. And then the slope here is 4. So I'm just going to underline those. The slope is 4, the y-intercept is 2. Pretty straightforward on that one. The second one here, letter B, it says y equals -5 plus 2/3 x. So this could also be written as a fraction like this. The program I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's what that means right there. 2/3 x. So, what do I notice is different about this? I notice that the x is no longer the first value in our equation. It's the second one. Oh. But the slope is always connected to the x. It's always the coefficient. So that means this 2/3 is our slope. And I know that the y-intercept is always the value without the x. It's always the constant by itself. So the y-intercept is here at -5. So on a graph, what that would look like is the y-intercept would be down here. Say this is -5. That's where the y-intercept would be. Letter C, moving on. Y equals 3/5 x minus 15. Again, starting here with the y-intercept, it would be at -15. And then the slope of our equation would be 3/5. or our rate of change would be 3/5. Last one here, letter D, m equals 1/4 h plus 25. Oh, I notice here that it's not x and y anymore, it's m and h. But I see that the format is still similar. It's a variable is equal to a variable with a coefficient plus or minus a constant, just a number. So it's the same idea here. This is still my slope of my equation, 1/4. This is still my y-intercept, positive 25. So don't let those letters confuse you. As long as it's set up the same way, it doesn't matter if it's m and h or y and x or e and m. It's the same type of thing. So go ahead and pause the video here and take a minute to underline the slope and circle the y-intercepts of each of these equations. And here are your answers, underlining the slopes, circling the y-intercepts. I want to point out this one in particular. Remember, we have to include the sign, the positive or negative, the plus or minus in front of our y-intercept. So the y-intercept here would be -3, not +3. Same with the slope, making sure that we include this negative sign so we know it's -5/2. Last one I'm going to go over before your last practice. Remember, when we're looking at a graph, it's important to just look at what we know before we look at even what the question is asking us. So what do you know? What do you notice about this graph? I see that looking from left to right, like how we read in English, the slope of the line is decreasing, which means it's a negative slope or negative y-intercept. I'm sorry, negative slope or negative rate of change. I also see here that we're talking about water level. So just how high the water is over time. So the time is changing by hours. I see this H here means hours. The water level is changing, The water level is changing by feet. And we're talking about the water in a pool. So those are things I can just notice about this graph before I even start to look at the question that's being asked. Here, what we're being asked for is our equation again, and to see what it means in context. So here, again, if we're looking for the slope of m, as m, we're looking for the change of y over the change in x. So if I were to use these points from 24 to 12, because remember, I want to use points that I know the numbers. So here, I know that this is 24 going up the y-axis, and it's 0 on the x-axis. So if I'm sliding down this line here, I don't know what all the points are until I get to this point. Because I know that on the x-axis it's 4, and on the y-axis it's 12. So it would look like this. And this one would be 0, 24. Right, along the rest of that, what I just did, I wouldn't know what those numbers are. So that's why I picked those 2 points. This distance is 12. Going across here would be 4. So it's 12 feet over 4 hours, which when we divide that, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 3 feet for 1 hour, which one, again, when we divide that, it's just going to simplify to 3. So our slope here is 3. B, meaning the y-intercept, is on the y-axis. So if I go up the y-axis until I find my line, this point right here at 24 is my y-intercept. So writing our equation, it would be y equals 3 is our slope times our x value plus, and let me write that in blue because that goes with the y-intercept, plus 24. And what does that mean in context? What does this 3 mean in context? What does this 24 mean in context? That means with the values, with the words that were given. What do those numbers mean? I had written it already, so here it is at the bottom. So in context, remember this was our equation. Let me write it again really fast. I should have had it written. Okay. It means that the water is... Oh, this is what I forgot. Wow. This is why we always check our work. So right here it says the water is decreasing by 3 feet an hour. So what did I forget in my equation? This says 3x. Well, if I look here, this distance from 24 to 12 is actually decreasing by 12. So it's going down by 12. So this 3 should also be negative because, like we said at the beginning, what we noticed about this graph is that it's a negative graph. So that means my slope has to be negative. So negative 3x plus 24. And the 24 means that the water level started at 24 feet. So making sure that we remember those and we can explain what they mean in context. Lastly, this is your practice, so go ahead and pause the video and practice these 5 questions before we go over the answers. So this is the first part here. Number 1, how much does the person start with? So if we look here at 0 weeks, that would be our starting point. If we go up to until we touch the line, it would be at 50. So $50 this person starts with. How much does the person save per week? Remembering that's our slope, our change of y over our change in x. So going here on the purple, it's 80 minus 70, which is 10. The orange going across is 6 minus 4, which is 2. So this person is saving $5 per week. The next question, what is slope? We know that that just means how much they're saving per week. So the slope would be 5. The y-intercept is what they started with. So you've already answered those questions. 1 and 2 are just in context, what they mean with these labels. 3 and 4 are just the numbers. So the equation, if we write it correctly, y equals our slope times x plus our starting value, or our initial value of 50. So way to go. Those are your answers for slope-intercept form and understanding what it means in context. Remember, slope is the same. It's also called rate of change. It's just how much it's changing. Remember, it can be positive or negative. Y-intercept, or the initial value, means its starting point. And then here, whoops, I switched those colors by mistake. I'll just go ahead and erase those. So here, remember, slope or rate of change is m, and b is our y-intercept or our initial value. These are your 3 con assignments. Make sure you log in and practice those. Watch this video again if you need help, or watch the videos in con. Search whatever you need to on Google to be able to master these 3 problems.